Have you ever wondered if you could just jump into a better version of your life with just a shift in your reality? Well, today we delve into the mesmerizing world of quantum jumps with Cynthia Sue Larson. She's a physicist and a best-selling author who bridges science and spiritualities. This is going to be a good one. Today we're going to discover how small changes in your mindset can lead to profound transformation in health, happiness, and prosperity. Cynthia will guide us through the fascinating science and practical techniques of quantum jumping. So, are you ready to leap into a new reality? Let's unlock the secrets and find out how good can it get here on season 1, episode 3 of the Spiritual Technologies Podcast.
Welcome to the Spiritual Technologies Podcast with Travis Wright, where mindfulness intersects with the cutting edge of tech. Dive into conversations with leading experts that illuminate the path to a higher self, blending spiritual insights with technological advancements. Join us in this journey of discovery and transformation.
Welcome to Spiritual Technologies. I'm Travis Wright, and today we got a fun one. We're going to dive into the great beyond in a whole wild way. So our guest today is Cynthia Sue Larson. She's a best-selling author of 6 books. That's a lot of books. And she's also an expert who bridges the gap between science and spirituality. She's renowned for helping people visualize and access whole new worlds of possibility. She's also the dynamic host of Living the Quantum Dream. And she's also made notable appearances on the Discovery Channel, History Channel, Gaia, the BBC. And get this, she also holds a degree in physics from UC Berkeley, an MBA, and she's a doctor of divinity. So she's blending all kinds of scientific knowledge with spiritual insights. She might be the real Doctor Who. I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Cynthia, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Travis. Thanks so much for having me on episode 3, season 1.
Episode 3, yes. And I was just doing some background research and whatnot, and I looked at your YouTube, and you had 33,333 subscribers.
That's amazing that you caught that moment. I would have loved a screenshot, but this is so cool.
Wild. I would have screenshotted it, but I've been in a weird glitchy world today, so luckily we're good to go. But thank you so much. I want to ask, maybe give the audience, share your academic journey and maybe some pivotal moments that led you to start exploring quantum physics and consciousness, because this is such a wild space.
Yeah, the consciousness thing started early in life because I've really felt like I was a conscious being before I was born. And that's perhaps wild sounding right there, but I was a sort of mystical child that way. And I really had that knowingness that I did exist, that there's this wonderful place between lifetimes that just feels blissed out, really amazing. So to come, to be in this life has been challenging for me. And consciousness and the connection between who we are and the way we interact with the physical world has been a key focus for me ever since I was quite young. And my parents would take me on travels. My dad wanted to see parts of the world before they changed, before they got westernized, before everything was McDonald's everywhere. So we would frequently go traveling to places where they'd never seen white people before, where they don't speak English, where maybe there was no electricity, no running water. So we were doing these crazy adventures when I was quite young. And being the mystic that I am, I could feel, it helped actually that they didn't speak the same language. I could really feel when I was in, a very small remote village in Africa with no roads, no water, and just huge baobab trees and the whole Southern Cross at night.
Wow.
I could feel the energy there and this dynamic life force that that we all share. And when we focus in sacred sites, whether it's a temple in Asia or the African Serengeti or a place somewhere in the Midwest or here on the west coast of California where I live, you can feel the energy in sacred sites and sacred places. And it was very obvious to me that when people come together with focus, shared intent, it changes the energy, the feeling of a place. So it is scientific. I know that may sound like that's not science. Okay, fair enough. My dad also loved mathematics. My dad had a big part in everything, because he was an atheist. You might think that's weird. It is weird because I'm this very spiritual child in a very scientific family where my dad just thought math is the prince of the sciences and the sciences are great. So my investigation then, therefore, of consciousness, of course, it would tend to it's obvious it would go into physics, especially quantum physics, because that is the one place where you can really get that sense of metaphysics, the fact that the observer has such a big say in quantum physics. You can't separate out the observer influence. And so it's kind of a big circular path to how I got to where I am.
Well, that is a fascinating thing because I mean that kind of goes into my next question because you were talking about the observer, and I remember the double slit experiment. The first time that I'd heard about that was from Dr. Fred Allen Wolf on What the Bleep movie, and I've always found that fascinating. So you have these little particles, and when you're watching them, they go through the slit, these two slits, and they create the same pattern on the background. But when you're not watching them, they just create this whole random thing. So was that one of the things that sort of helped inspire you around the quantum jumps? Because it's such a wild thing. Like I still don't even understand it.
Okay, yeah, okay. The quantum jumps ties in with what I've been also referring to as reality shifts, and I've had a website tracking it for 25 years, reporting on firsthand reports. Just like in the field of biology, there are field notes and field observers. Like Charles Darwin would go out on his SS Beagle and he'd observe what's going on in the Galapagos. Well, it's the same thing with reality shifts. People, I'm trusting their firsthand reports when they tell me, like, Cynthia, something changed. I was, literally in my room and something completely vanished and then it reappeared somewhere else. That kind of thing. Things appearing, disappearing, transforming, transporting, changes in the way we experience time. So that's the idea behind reality shifts. And so that's something I've been tracking. And when you look at this idea that you mentioned, thank you for bringing up the double slit experiment, because this is huge. That experiment, once again, it involves the most elegant apparatus for all science experiments ever created, according to many researchers. They say that's for sure the most elegant, meaning the simplest experiment. One photon emitter, which is just one quantum particle at a time, goes through one or the other of two slits, like two skinny, long, tall doorways, and then they land on a screen. That one by one, the photon either goes through one little slit or the other slit, and then it goes splat like a paintball on the screen. If you have a particle detector in one of those little slits, then you know which slit the photon went through, and you can see that it left a little pattern, kind of like it's going to look like two doorway slits on the screen, just like you'd expect it to look like. But to review this experiment again, it's very simple, very elegant, but something weird happens when you don't have a particle detector in either one of the slits, and instead you're only looking at the screen. It's not just a random pattern that appears there. It might look random at first glance, but what happens is a diffraction pattern, very much like ripples constructing and destructively interfering with each other when you throw two pebbles simultaneously into a pond. One pebble creates concentric circles. Two pebbles creates an interference pattern, and that's what shows up on the screen. And you might think, sure, you got two slits, you'll get an interference pattern. Okay, but here's the problem. Only one photon is going through at a time. So it's indicating that one photon is interfering with itself. And that's one of the many trippy observations here. And so the observer effect is powerful. Like, we can definitely see the influence that an observer has on the outcome of what's being observed. Therefore, that ties in with my favorite question: how good can it get? Because if we're looking for something to be optimal and we're asking how good can it get, we're steering it ever upwards into more positive possible realities.
So while you were explaining that, which was a great explanation, by the way, the diffusion pattern, right? So I don't know that I had made that connection before. So it's almost like when it's not being observed, it's going through some field of something, and so it's dispersing on its own because is there some other energetic force, or maybe that's dark matter or something that's interfering with it to make it move into different places that maybe is not activated whenever it's being observed?
It's such a good question. This is why we don't yet know the answer to that question, because you might think, well, sure, we would. Quantum physics is what? It's over 100 years
Mm,
old. Yeah, it is. We still don't have an agreed upon quantum interpretation of why one photon would interfere with itself. So we've got lots of different theories on this. There's the Copenhagen interpretation people may know about, and that's the one Dr. Quantum's talking about, the
mm,
collapse of the wave function. I mean, he's written books. Fred Alan Wolf has written books about what he calls the quiff, the collapse, the quantum wave function, the quiff, and the fact that you
mm,
can pop the quiff, pop the wave function, collapse it into one or the other, sort of force it to make a choice. So
mm,
that's one interpretation. There are so many interpretations. Another good one is the holographic interpretation by David Bohm, who's basically, he talks about the implicate and the explicate order. Like there's this hidden realm. And as a mystic, I love that one because I can feel, like I said, these energies around the world. Like I can feel the energy in a place that's sacred where people come together with positive intentions. And over time, it changes the energy signature of that place. Absolutely. It's
mm.
palpable to someone. I think we can all sense these things. And so that's interesting. And then there are other really good interpretations too. Like Hugh Everett III came up with something called the many worlds interpretation, also known as the multiverse. And that's the one you see in movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Mm-hmm.
So these are,
Which is
but it's not decided. We don't know for sure which
right.
interpretation is the one. Maybe it isn't the one. Maybe it's like this blend. Quantum physics seems to like that. And I didn't even cover the handshake between the future and the past. Physicist John Kramer talks about the transactional interpretation. And so it's
Mm,
like the future reaches to the past and says, hello, we're going to do it this way.
wow.
But for whatever reason, we are definitely getting this strange imprint on that screen with one photon. Absolutely. It's like it's split in two and traveled as a wave function and then interfered with itself in that diffraction pattern. So if you don't have the particle detector here, then it's not a particle, it's a wave. And you get a wave pattern. And if you have the particle detector in the two slits and you're forcing it, like, okay, I know you went through one of these, show me which one, then it acts like the particle. So it's got a dual nature. It's particle and it's wave. Which is it? It's both. But
It's
why
both.
is that happening? Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's the whole paradigm where it's like it's the particle and the wave because it's in parallel dimensions potentially.
That's one possibility. This is what I mean. The quantum interpretation is what's not yet agreed upon. So it's still wide open to conjecture. I mean,
Yeah.
physicists will tell you it's not conjecture. We're doing experiments. Okay, fine. But for the layperson, it's like, well, we don't know then. Right, we don't know.
So maybe you're not the Doctor Who, maybe you're the Doctor Strange because he had the multiple possible.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way that, like, surfing those wave functions and investigating how good can it get for all of us. That's something that's very timely right now for
Mhm.
humanity. So these are important questions.
That's
They're
good.
not.
'Cause
They're
we need to get it. We need to get it. How good can it get? Because it's not so good right now. We need to make it better.
well, to quote author, do you know this? I think he's great. Philip K. Dick. He wrote movies.
Yeah.
I mean, he wrote the short stories that then became these amazing movies. Like I'm trying to think of the names of them now. They're like super super cool stuff. Trying to think of they're all.
I know he's written a lot of stuff. I don't know that I've dove
Yes,
in his stuff.
a lot of science fiction stuff.
Yeah, very
He's come
cool.
up with.
So let's get back to that because it sounds very interesting when we're talking about the how consciousness is working, how quantum fields are working, and then you made a comment really early on about how exciting it is to know that with the way that these quantum particles are reacting, it shows you that how good can it get. It shows you that through maybe observing and thinking about
Mhm.
things, then maybe you get to change your own reality based on your perception or your desires. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, there are lots of ways to do this because the topic may sound wild. Like the quantum jump itself in physics is simply it's more or less just jumping from one energy shell. Like that was the old model of atoms when I was going to school. Like there'd be a nucleus, there'd be an electron, and the
Mhm.
electron can jump from one energy level to another. That's literally what physics was referring to as a quantum jump. that like the state change is just from an electron, which is also a quantum particle, jumping from one energy level to another. So it takes more energy to be at a certain level, but if you bring energy to the electron, it can make the jump. That can be visible to the human eye to see that kind of. It looks like it's teleporting. Like 1 second the electron's here, and then flash, and then now it's moved to another location. So when I'm talking about quantum jumps, I'm actually bringing that concept from the realm of the very, very small under the Planck scale, which is extremely tiny. It's the so-called quantum realm. And I'm saying we're all in the quantum realm. Everything is quantum. And even me as an entire body of all these molecules and atoms and electrons, I can collectively make a quantum jump. So and then in the book Quantum Jumps, I'm showing some simple things we can do to help bring this about, so that if you're feeling depressed, for example, or feeling sad and you want to change that, this is going to sound extremely simple, but it takes something clean. This pen is clean. And if you put something clean in your mouth, even if you're not able to smile, like I can't smile, too many bad things have happened, just go like that and turn the corners of your mouth up. And it sounds like, well, what good would that do? We are so connected between these levels of our physical being and, higher levels of being, that just doing that one thing has been proven to be enough to cheer people up, so that they're able to, they're going to laugh more when they see a cartoon than the control group who was not given something clean to put in their mouth and turn the corners of their mouth up. So just smiling, laughter yoga, smiling practices, smiling meditations, or if you feel like I can't smile at all, then use a clean implement and just let yourself experience an improvement in overall attitude. So this is something interesting that is measurable, that we can see, like, okay, you're acting as if, in one way to look at it, you're acting as if you are happier, and then you become happier. So it's very similar to this idea of the multiverse, where there's a parallel possible reality just next to the one you're in, where you're just a little bit happier. What if you could just jump into that, and now you are a little bit happier? Or what if you could tap your head and you could be a little bit smarter? I'm doing this because it's been proven to work. My mother, when she taught kindergarten, she would have the kids tap their heads before a test. And she said their scores were great. And so she was onto something early on. But it's been scientifically proven.
Yeah, I just saw a video yesterday of this dude who was doing, he called it a cosmic head massage. And he was in India, and some dude went in there and was just doing all this stuff. And he was like, whoa, oh my God, I just feel like I just went to space. Man, that was amazing. So there's something to that. And that actually reminded me of the quote from Tony Robbins. He said back in the day, if you want to change your emotion, get into a new motion. Motion impacts emotion. So you got to move. And so I think maybe that one little thing of just turning that frown upside down a little bit and making it smile, trigger something in the nervous system to trigger maybe some dopamine or something in the brain that you're like, oh, we got something happier going, some chemicals popping out or something, right?
It works. Even pointing at your head can work. That's interesting, because then it starts getting into the fact that our fingers actually emit light. I've got a book about aura advantage, and it talks about finger light coming right out of the fingers. Yeah. So I think pointing is just, you're sending light to your head and it's activating. And if you feel like you have trouble relating to maybe your family member or a neighbor or a coworker, you can put your hand or hands right over your heart center, and that has been proven to increase, the love and the feeling of compassion, and it just smooths the way to get along where maybe you hadn't been getting along at all before.
Yeah, that's a very loving approach, because I was pointing them the wrong finger, apparently. I didn't feel so loving.
I haven't seen the studies on that one, but I can imagine what may have happened, especially in New York.
I did the Carillion photography, and I saw energy emitting from my middle finger, and it was very forceful. But
oh no,
I'm joking.
Don't try this in New York City.
One of the questions I wanted to ask was about the aura, because I know you have a video out there that shows, teaching people how to see auras in a very quick fashion, like just in a couple minutes. Like,
oh yes.
And I was noticing this because you have like a whitish background behind you.
Yes.
And I was noticing you have some energy. It's either the shadow or you had some energy swirling around you from time to time. So it's like maybe your aura is in full effect today too, potentially.
Oh, I'm sure it is. And yeah, you're right. That's a white background. It's perfect for aura of energy viewing. The video you're talking about is the one with the hands, although you
Mm,
can see my fingers if I hold it in front of my shirt. But ideally, you put your hand in front of that white background. Some people are trying to see the energy around my hand, and that sort of works too, I suppose. Although usually your own hand is best because then you can just be relaxed and there's no time pressure. And what you want to do is focus your attention right between two fingers and put your hand at arm's length. So you don't want to stretch it way out away from you. And then with that white background. And then what you'll start noticing is just that, like you're referring to, that shimmery kind of an energy around each of the fingers. And if you just relax and sort of let your eyes relax, sort of a soft focus, then often you can start seeing colors. And that's where it gets fun. But I like what you described, like swirling energies going on.
mm. You know, it was great. Last week, for the first time ever, I went and got a cranial sacral therapy done for the first time ever. And so, and this guy was interesting. He's here in Kansas City. His name's Luke, and I think Luke Welsh is his name. And I was just looking online because I moved back from Puerto Rico, and I hadn't. There were a lot of alternative healings not there in Puerto Rico, and so I was like, oh, I remembered I should go see sacral cranial person here. And this person was highly reviewed, and so I went and he actually comes. He was going to study to be a monk in the
Oh,
with the in the Taoist tradition, and then he studied Rolfing and with like the hard moving stuff, and then sacral crane. It was so wild when he was doing so. I don't even know exactly what he was doing, but he was just sort of gently maneuvering my body, and man, I could just see swirling colors of just flow. It was almost like he would unlock something, and just the colors was just flowing, just unbelievably. It was a cool experience.
nice. Love it.
Yeah, yeah. Sort of like connecting or turning on the Reiki energy, like you were talking about, or just the energy from your fingertips. You know, and it seems like all animals, all things have some sort of, if it's alive, you can see it with Carillion photography,
Mm.
right? You can see that's alive, and so it's pretty fascinating to take a look at that stuff and realize, like, wow, everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. Back to Nikola Tesla, we're all this. It's all frequency and waves, right?
That's true. Yeah, and it's nice when you get that experience and you feel like, oh, I can see it. And then sometimes people wonder, am I hallucinating or is that real? Because often we don't talk about these things. So it's so good that you're able to bring this up and discuss it. I just recently was getting chiropractic treatments because I had some soft tissue issues going on
Mm,
with one of my legs pre-pandemic, and then I got long COVID. Things got worse,
mm,
and finally I'm like, okay, I'm going to go see a chiropractor. What a difference! And exactly what you're talking about. I mean, obviously they're doing things to physically manipulate the leg, but I could also feel the energy flowing, and
hmm
obviously that's where it's like when the flow returns. It's what we hear about in acupuncture also.
hmm
And I study martial arts, and that's the healing part of it's very much part of the martial arts that I've been studying. And so that energy flow, when it gets going again, which can be assisted through physical adjustments like craniosacral or chiropractic, and then wow, you just get that light show, or you get that feeling of
hmm
tremendous flow of healing. I got that feeling too.
Yeah.
And then you just know, like, oh, this is good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was wild for me because, like, say we are spiritual beings having a human experience, right?
Right.
That's yes. I don't know who said that originally, but that's always resonated with me. And I was in Mexico a couple of years ago. It was like 2021, and I did an experience with Bufo, right? And which was like a psychedelic kind of a thing. And the experience that I got was one of just massive amounts of love, but it was one. The message I got was like, you need to learn how to fit in your meat suit better. It was like, you're not properly sitting in your meat suit. I was like, that's weird. I was like, it's a meat suit. I was like, okay, I'm not in my meat suit. And then, but I think that there's something there. It's like the fascia, if it's not in the right place, or you got
Yes.
energy blocks, or you're just
Yes.
so. I think that having body work as just something for the audience to think about is
Oh, for
go
sure.
do some body energy work, because that it's like you're sitting in this meat suit. You're a spiritual being, but if you're not using it properly,
Yeah.
you might feel better just as a result of some gentle manipulations.
And it's not the same. Yeah, seeing a medical doctor in America anyway is not the same as a chiropractor or a
Sure.
craniosacral therapist. Because my physical doctor was saying, well, you've got ligament laxity, and they were saying like it's kind of like you're doomed. They didn't say that, but I said, is there
Right.
anything we can do? They're like, no, which is not true. Obviously, then I'm seeing a chiropractor. Like, I asked her about the ligament laxity, and the answer is it's not that bad. It's like, and I could feel it. It's like it's not that bad. And
Right.
what I was getting from the chiropractor is what you're saying. It's all about the fascia. So you can use some kinesiology tape applied properly, do these adjustments, do some energy work yourself, gently massage the area
Mhm.
to improve the fascia. The fascia will hold everything together. What a difference. And then when you feel the energy like you and I do, then it's like massive healing is possible,
Yeah.
where previously you may have been told like there's no solution, like you're
Yeah.
doomed.
True. And I'm overweight, so I actually have fascia.
I think I do too. I'm still losing weight from
Trying
the
to move it
long
around.
COVID.
Trying to move it all around. So you mentioned kinesiology,
Yeah.
and I know it's another one of the things you were talking about was learning how to do muscle testing for yourself. And I think this is just
Yes.
a good primer because our
Okay.
very next guest is going to be Dr. Bradley Nelson, who's
Nice.
talking about the emotion code and the body code, and then
Oh, perfect.
yeah. So that's a good primer. So if you could maybe teach people the trick on muscle testing, or what's maybe
Sure.
one of your
Okay.
favorite ways, because I use like my interlock my fingers and then
Yeah.
I ask questions. But which way is the best way? Do you think?
Okay, well, in my book Or Advantage, I talk about dowsing. I'm going to start there because I talk about coat hangers, and there are, I'm okay. Bear with me, I'll get there. But dowsing is the beginning. This is a real dowsing rod,
Mm,
fancy, but you don't need one like this. You can actually use. So I'm just spinning it, so you can get your yes. You can ask
hmm
for a no. You can get your no. You can get your
Can you
maybe.
use two or just use one?
You can use two. In my book Or Advantages, I use two coat hangers. You don't need something fancy like this. You can just actually pull two wire. It should be metal. Works
Mm,
better. Wire coat hangers, and then you hold them loosely with your hands. I think starting is good to start with two because you got them
mhm,
both in your hands, and then you sort of walk toward a person or walk. A person is good because they've got an energy field, and you're going to
mhm,
hit it at some point. And the hangers are just doing this. They're sort of swinging. When you get to the person, then they go whoop, and then it opens like a barn door opening, or they
mhm.
might close. But either way, you can tell like, oh, it'll be going like this, and then like say I'm walking toward you, and at some
Yeah.
point it's going to go,
Mhm.
and then I'll back away, and then they're swinging again, and like,
They're
oh, that's
so they're
why.
so fascinating, Cynthia. So
Yeah.
my father, stepdad, he was a water plant operator, and so he had some,
Oh,
but they were really easy to make because basically, if you just take like a copper tube that's like I don't even know about an inch tube,
yeah,
a
yeah,
couple of them, make them about
yeah.
6 inches as a breaker for the handle, and you take
Perfect.
that one wire, you make it about an inch, the six
Yes.
inches, and then about 12 inches or so,
Yep.
15 inches. You make
Yep.
two of them. So I made some. They're not hard to make.
They're so easy. I'm
Yeah, it
starting.
was so wild on that. I
It,
got to tell a quick story on this, then I'll
yeah.
let you get back to the story. Is that they were watching a ghost show, right? And my grandma had just passed away like less than a month before, and they literally my dad they're kind of very Christian, right? And so, but they went and tested it, and they're like, oh my god, we think we talked to grandma, and I was like, what? Nah. And this was like 2001, 2001. So I came down and it was the craziest thing. And I was like, okay, grandma, where are you? And they went, whoonk, and then like one pointed to a picture of grandma and one pointed to another picture of grandma. And then they went back and I was like, okay. I was like, well, how old am I? And this one just started spinning around. And I think I was like 27 or
So
something. I
you're
thought she
counting
was
the
27,
rotations. Yeah.
27 and a half times. And then they went,
Wow.
I was like, what? I was like, I'm done. Whoa. I don't know what. But for real, that was crazy. So it was so if there's
Sweet.
energies on the other side, you can talk to them too, apparently.
We're not dead when we're gone. That's what I know when I was a little girl. It's like it's hard for me. It felt harder to be here in a physical meat suit, as you call it,
Mhm,
than it does to be between lives. That was like
mhm,
bliss. But
mhm.
obviously, we're here for a reason. Yeah. So okay, with the metal dowsing, I just wanted to get people the idea. You can play with this at home. It's fun, and I do describe the exercises in Aura Advantage on how to do that. My book Aura Advantage. But anyway, Okay, so that's the beginning. So knowing, okay, dowsing works. But what if you don't have your dowsing tools with you? Well, then you've got muscle testing. And it works with a similar protocol. In other words, you want to know your yes, you want to know your maybe, you want to get to know your no. So you want to know all of those and figure it out. Muscle testing, now I'm showing little finger loops. Like if you make paper chains for the Christmas tree or something, it's, you know how you bring circles together. I'm bringing my thumb and my pinky finger together because they're weak. So it's
Mm,
easy to pull them apart like that.
okay.
Now, for my yes, I'm going to say, is my name Cynthia Sue Larson? And I get a resist. So it's holding together. That's my yes. So it's like, yes, that's my name. Is my name Travis? No. you am I?
Mhm.
And then you want to ask some sort of a maybe question. I can't even think what that would be. Okay, is the presidential election this year going to result in someone brand new for the presidency, or oh, that's sort of, I don't know. This, it's hard to think of a maybe. What's the maybe?
So what is the maybe though? Because I've never asked a maybe question. What I'll do is I'll do my middle finger and my
Okay.
thumb
Okay.
because
Well, like, yeah, you can
that's
ask.
the same difference. I've never tried that, but it's sort of the same. Yeah, it's you're. I think the way that Dr. Bradley Nelson said it was like your subconscious knows, and so this is just a way. It's an interface for you to tap into your subconscious.
It's your whole being knows.
Okay.
So it's, to me, the subconscious to me is these lower levels of conscious agency,
Mhm.
like the gut feelings we all have.
Mm.
And I think what he's actually tapping into is probably the entirety of one's being,
Mhm.
because I that's like high self, middle self.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
pointing above. Like it's like all of us, we're all of a piece.
The super conscious, the conscious,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
subconscious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when you integrate that and you get the harmonious alignment there between your subconscious and your high self, bingo, then that's exactly what's right. Even though your egoic, your brain and what you thought you were doing is something different, perhaps. And that's where this work comes in that you'll be talking with him about. But you can, meanwhile, just do a muscle test. And, if maybe maybe might be, is someone going to, will a package be delivered while I'm on this interview with you? Maybe. And that's kind of, it's sticky. It's like it sort of sticks, then it comes apart. That's my maybe. So, like, I don't know. Maybe we'll get a package arriving, and the doorbell will ring, and like, oops, ignore the noise. But
Very nice.
maybe,
Hopefully, it's full with love.
yes.
Good stuff. So I want to ask then about, so you went to school at UC Berkeley, right?
Yes,
And you
right.
got your physics degree. So
Yes.
what was the connection point when you're studying that, and then what was the connection to consciousness and the kind of understanding
Mm.
that, because it seems like if you're a lot of people who are in the medical world and very, you're taught, here's the specific way it is. And my sister is a PhD in microbiology and
Yeah,
virology, and so it's like,
right.
you know I you know what, I
Mhm.
will say this, I because she's very open-minded to things, so I think maybe you get to a certain point where you got to test everything, and so doctors can become even
Mm.
way more open-minded than MBAs perhaps, because sit down, shut up, we're going to tell you the way it is. But then when you get to the doctorate, you gotta do some testing and you got to validate things, and then so you're able to test things more. So I think
Yeah,
so.
this gets into for me, it was laser focus at UC Berkeley, real specific.
Mhm.
Specificity was the key, not sensitivity. Sensitivity is like wide open.
Mm.
Specificity is laser focus. So
Mhm.
that UC Berkeley was very laser focused, very specific, so it wasn't so much of an exploration of consciousness for me at that time, as much as learn the mathematics, be well versed on what the test will cover and what the lab results are supposed to be, and write up the experiment properly. It's not the time to go like, woo, and I'm feeling energy. That would not.
All right.
Okay, having said
But
that,
you are in Berkeley, so I mean, there's some woo woo going on over there.
well, maybe back in the 60s, but it's changed. I mean, there's like
Right.
this, things have changed. But the funny thing for me about the quantum physics that I loved so much is sometimes on an exam, this is where the quantum physics and the consciousness did come in for me, because I would get questions sometimes where there's no way to show the work. It's just like, write the answer for this wave function. And I would just know what the answer was, and then I'd realize that is
Mhm.
right. So it would sort of pop into my mind the way, like a quantum jump, like that, like inspiration, like just knowing, like the way
Mhm.
that we get information from these higher levels of conscious agency, which are not covered in quantum physics, although they should be. We assume we know who the observer is. but do we really? There's this much, like I said, goes way, way high up and also goes down. But just to be able to write the answer down on the test, to me, that was proof that, yeah, this quantum physics is consciousness, because I just know the answer, I can just write it down and don't need to show work for quantum physics. This is not like Newtonian physics where you have to show every single step of all that stuff.
Well, I know that for my daughter going through algebra, if she doesn't show the work, then by God, she didn't. That's not a correct answer. But it's like, come on, if I know the answer and here's the right answer, and
Right.
well, but everything's there's so much AI and stuff out there. They're probably like, well, we got to make sure you're doing it. But now it's like you got to blend with technology at this point, because here we are, we're on a whole other journey, and it's like technology and consciousness, and we're in this space now. You gotta figure it out. But you're right on. It's good. You're using your intuition. You were saying,
Yes.
oh, I maybe don't know this, but let me tap into the version of me who does, and let me go get
Totally
tutor
works.
from the smarter version of me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I that's not the way the material was taught, though. I'm just saying, but it was
Yeah.
easily accessible. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun.
That is so great. So, and I've gone down some rabbit holes on this particular topic before, right? So it's like I was studying some Jose Silva and the Silva method back in the day, and I came across. So I think Bert Goldman was he was a dude who was like one of the Silva teachers, and so he talked about some quantum jumping too, and saying like, if there's any skill that you want, just go chat with that person, go jump to that person, ask them, and then say, oh, maybe there's a version of you that's the best guitar player of all time, and go jump and go talk to that one. Maybe you can get some tips. And so just the thought that you can go and step into that world and then ask questions to somebody. I think that, is that it is wild. Like, what is it that's given those answers?
Well, that's what's interesting. It's this level of consciousness that extends beyond our physical body. So we do fit into our meat suits, but we also have an energy field, and we can also connect, like you did with your grandmother. Like I've had a couple of occasions where I just instantly got knowingness. On one occasion, I was on a cruise ship with a friend, and we had budgeted properly for the trip to Mexico, except we had not figured in and counted in the tip for the people that were working on the cruise ship. And we just had a small amount of money, like $5, and we were sharing a room on the ship. And I looked at her and said, well, as long as we're at sea, they've got the casino, the slot machines. And I said, didn't you have an aunt that used to be like, she's passed on, but wasn't she really, really good with slot machines? And my friend said, yes, she was. And I said, no problem. What we'll do is we'll just, I'll just connect, I'll feel this love for your aunt. We'll just spot, she'll just bring her energy over the appropriate slot machine, and we'll just play them until we get the exact right amount for the tip. Now, my friend wanted to get greedy with it, but anyway, I told her, no, we're stopping, because we did exactly that. So we turned like the $5. Yeah, it was awesome.
That's hilarious. I need to consult her aunt for DraftKings. So my sports bets could be a little better. They are horrible. No, that's so fascinating to sort of tap into that stuff. And I read this book called the My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything. It's by Thomas Campbell. Wow, that dude is so smart, and he's such a smart ass. Like, I think he's my spirit animal. I've determined that he might be I'm gonna have to get him on a show future as well. But he started out as being a very skeptic physicist.
Yes.
And it was gone through some of the journeys that you've gone through. And then he came out and was like, whoa.
He went through the Monroe Institute, I believe. So he got really trained on that kind of remote viewing that they do with the sensory deprivation and all that. So he got way in. That blew his mind. Like, how is it possible to know for sure what's going on when you're not physically there in space and time? But it's like you are. Like, what is happening? What allows that? So those questions, plus his expertise in, I think he was in the tech field, like I forget exactly what he was doing, something with like NASA or that kind of technological work. Yeah, brilliant guy. And I've talked to him about the Mandela Effect, reality shifts, interviewed him, and he was a keynote speaker for our International Mandela Effect Conference in
Mm.
September 2023. And he talked about a reality shift that happened to him with a 4-way nasal spray that completely changed its ingredient components. And it no longer, you can't even call it a 4-way nasal spray because it doesn't have 4 ingredients anymore. But he and his wife both remember it. And so that's the kind of reality shift that I've been tracking for more than 25 years. And you're right. He's looking at wondering like, how can this, this big consciousness field, he says it likes to play with us, like the big consciousness plays
Hmm.
with us. And I would say the same thing. I think we're being invited to experience levels of higher conscious agency and a greater interdimensional experience of what it means to be a human being.
It's so fascinating. You talk about the Mandela effect, and I wanted to touch base on that with you as well. Um, I know that you've talked about. I didn't know you actually had a conference around that, but that's fascinating that there would be a conference around that. And
Yes.
so, so how exactly do they spell Berenstain Bears? Like, which one's the real one? Like, because I've seen a few of these, and I'm going, no, 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 it's totally that one. And then I don't know, am I misremembering? Or is it a group misremembering? I mean, or is it
They,
it's so wild. Like, what is the let people know who haven't even heard about the Mandela effect? Like, what is it all about? Because it's a wild thing.
oh, I love the way you left it open. Berenstain, what is it? We're both saying Berenstein primarily. That's what I remember, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what a lot of people remember. Berenstein, the vaguely Jewish bears with the, you don't pronounce it Stein, it's Steen. But
Mm-hmm.
now none of those are appropriate because it's always been Berenstain, like a stain on the carpet or a stain on your
Yeah.
clothing. Now, do you remember the Berenstain bears? Like they
I
ate
don't
too much
remember the Berenstain. I would have made him. I would
jam.
have made a joke about that, just like you did. Like, there's a stain on my pants. There's a Berenstain.
Right,
Like, no,
right.
because it's Berenstein.
Right. And so if you look up what is the Mandela effect and you look it up and you stumble into Wikipedia, which I don't recommend going to, but if you did, then you'll see that it's mass misremembering, collective misremembering, and so on and so forth. That's not what I think is happening here from a physics standpoint, from everything we're talking about today. Obviously, we need to allow for the possibility. What if we remember correctly? What if this is a collective mismatched memory? It's kind of like the history, the official history now shows the Berenstain family created the Berenstain Bears, and it just goes back that way. So okay, we'll acknowledge there is this official history, but that's not what you and I remember. We
Mhm.
remember Berenstain, and to say they're both true is to allow for the particle. It's like that little quantum photon to go through both slits and
Mhm.
create that diffraction pattern. We're saying they're both true, which that's what's interesting because we remember it one way, the history shows it another. That's like showing if you subscribe to the multiple, realities approach, the many worlds interpretation of Hugh Everett III, the multiverse theory. Then you've got like possibility one is Berenstein or Berenstein, and then the other one's Berenstain. And what we're noticing is they're both showing up because people remember Berenstein, but the truth is Berenstain.
Mm. And so there's some people who believe that Nelson Mandela passed away in prison in the 80s,
Yes.
right? And there's
Yes.
other people who believe that Nelson Mandela got out of prison. I remember seeing Nelson Mandela being all old and being like a president. So there's no way that the one that he died earlier. So it's like, but there's videos of that, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so like, how
Well,
did he die too? And there's like a whole list of these things that people have got. There's a big Reddit, subreddit around the Mandela effect. So if you're curious about that particular area, just doing some research on that. There's some things.
yes.
I mean, I guarantee you, there's one of them in there that you're going to be like, oh no, no, it was totally this. Nope, it wasn't. Whoa. So misremembering, or it's the particle and the wave simultaneously. And so
Yes.
I would like you guys all to remember me as the super fit, very wealthy Travis Wright. If you can remember me as that guy.
We got it. We got you. We're
Thank
locking
you.
it in.
Thank you so much. That was me. Good stuff. So let's tap into that then. So this right. So how do you address skepticism in the traditional scientific community regarding this type of stuff? And like, what evidence or experiences did you find most compelling that support the theory of quantum jumping and how it necessarily works.
Well, I think the strongest evidence we're getting right now comes from some experiments that it was a collaborative effort between scientists at the University of Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, Scotland,
Mm,
and some physicists that were working in Vienna, Austria. And what they did was a certain version of that double slit experiment where they had two observational devices at the same place at the same time, to answer a question of what if you're observing the observer. So it's like,
mm,
and so they set the experiment up with 6 entangled photons, 2 observational devices, took that little snapshot moment, photo finish, like, okay, what's going on? Is it the particle or is it the wave? And what the reason they did this was to test the idea that if you've got an observer, you might get a different, the observer might see something different than the person, who's there supposedly first, even though the observation is happening at the same time. It's okay. It sounds complicated, but I'll try to make it simple. So let's just simplify it and say you've got 2 observers at the same place at the same time, 2 witnesses. Do they see the same thing or not? And this experiment, published in 2019, said they do not see the same thing. And there is our news flash, should be the headline for 2019. Like, 2 observers at the same place at the same time absolutely can witness 2 different realities. And that is how nature works.
mm,
And when we notice that, then we're saying that we're living in this multiverse, that we experience subjective realities, that the idea that there's one truth that everybody agrees on is not necessarily so. And you might think, well, that sounds kind of scary and dysfunctional, but actually it opens up the ability for each of us to be as within, so without, to
mm,
live a life of miracles, to experience this, and to really be able to follow a lot of the spiritual teachings from the perennial philosophy, which really brings things together to a pinnacle of recognizing that there is this great goodness. There's, we all know what goodness is, and we can feel it. We can live by it in accordance with it, and that's, so it's ultimately a very spiritual way of looking at science.
that's beautiful. I love that. As within, so without. I love that so much that I created this ring, which is a shikana, which is a Peruvian symbol, which is as above, so below, as within, so without. I've had this about 15 years. This used to be a silver dollar that I stole from someone,
Mhm.
and I years before I always kept it, and then I said, you know what? I'm going to remind myself that I'm not perfect. I'm just going to always check my ego. That coin that I stole years ago, I'm going to make it into my this ring. And I have at a jeweler here in Kansas City make it for me. He decided to keep me in check and be like, hey, you ain't all that. Keep yourself in check in your ego, Mr. Travis. So we are not flawless for sure. And I love the idea around observing the observer. I remember watching that and seeing that for the first time again on What the Bleep.
Yes.
And the observer in our own minds, because we get caught up in the chatter in our brain, chatter, and then you can watch that
Yes.
person doing that, but then you can observe that you're observing that. You're like, whoa, who am I? Right?
Right.
Like, who is this? Well, it's a meat suit, but what's that energy that's encompassing this meat suit? Because I'm not these thoughts, because I can watch them.
Right.
Such a paradox.
Well, it gets you a taste of the fact that we've got neurons in our brain. So we have that level of consciousness. We actually have neurons in the heart. So you can feel that knowingness from the heart. And guess what? We've got neurons in the gut. So at a very simple scale, most of us can start to recognize, are you in alignment between what you're thinking, what your emotions are, and then what your gut feelings are?
Mm.
And that's really important for what I would call top level quantum jumping, because at the basic level, sure, you can talk to an expert and kind of become that, but the goal for me is it needs to be a spiritual path for it to feel
Mm.
optimal. So it's not some painting oneself in a corner like, well, I thought I wanted to do this, so I learned how. Great. No, it should, ideally, how good can it get would be, it's something that you're thinking about, but you actually love it and you need it at the gut level. And so then you're living a dream come true. And it
Mm.
may not be what you thought you wanted or Hollywood or some sales marketing agency convinced you that you want, but instead it's what's genuine for you, what's
Mm.
authentic, what's real.
I love that. So I want to talk about this because this will be fun because you mentioned your dream come true. How good can it get?
Yeah.
Right. So in your journey, what has been some of the most interesting or awe-inspiring experiences that you've had with reality shifting that's maybe most impacted your life or somebody in your audience that was just like, oh my goodness, you're not even going to believe this.
Yeah, well, healing has been amazing, off the hook. Like seeing bones instantly healed, cancer
Mm,
instantly gone. My grandmother had an inoperable liver cancer, and she was in her 90s, and so she didn't want to do anything about it. But she had a lot of people praying for her, including me. And the doctors couldn't believe what happened next because they had imaging, they had blood tests, they had everything to really prove that she had inoperable liver cancer. And because she was in her 90s, they couldn't operate. They didn't want to give her harsh chemicals or chemo.
mm,
She's in her
mm.
90s. It would kill, that their treatments would kill her. So
Right.
so what they weren't counting on was, guess what? It's gone. So she went from a 3 months to live kind of a situation to, we don't know what just happened here, but you don't have any tumors whatsoever. So that was, and I was actually at that time doing a lot of prayer for her. So this is a very
Mm,
spiritual way of feeling that energy flow coming through.
mm,
I could
mm,
feel the shift, and then sure enough, and on the phone, I was talking to a friend who'd broken her leg, and I could feel the shift. She felt it. She said, my leg itches. And she'd just broken it. She jumping from boulder to boulder. I think I described this in quantum jumps. And then she just broke her leg when she landed
mm,
really badly because she'd been drinking alcohol, and then it was
mm,
kind of foolish. And then she was starting a new job. The whole thing was like a terrible, terrible alignment of events. But then it got weirder because when she went in for the broken bone, before she phoned me, the doctors had seen her and they're like, "Yep, here's the X-ray. It's broken." Then she's talking to me on the phone, and I'm doing what I like to do for people. Sometimes it works, where you can just feel it's like this tremendous healing energy. We can do this for each other too. And she felt like it was itching inside. I said, "That is fantastic." It was driving her nuts on the phone. She said, "It's really itching." I said, "That's amazing." And it, to me, it indicates it's like this is at an advanced level of mostly healed. That's and that's Then she went back like in a day or two, and they couldn't show any sign that the leg had been ever broken. So it was
mm.
awkward to explain to her new employers why she took time off for all these X-rays. Like,
so how does that work? So let me ask this because I have gone down the path of Lynn McTaggart and her power of eight and how
yeah,
group meditation is so powerful when multiple people are intending something, right? And I
yeah.
was thinking about the pineal gland and how there's piezoelectric crystals inside our pineal gland, right? And if you get a bunch of people that's group meditating or praying for a certain intention, it seems like, whoa, that's going to be more activated, maybe even more powerful in the consciousness realm. Is that sort of is that how that works? Maybe is that where you're tapping into, like, if you're just one person and you're a very powerful person though, right? You're very you've gone down the journey, but one person, and what is it that you're doing to help them out? Maybe that's something that
All
people would
I'm
love to know.
all
Is
I'm
there?
doing is connecting straight to the pinnacle, going to the ultimate goodness, the oneness, the
Mm,
absolute, where eternity and
mm,
infinity exist. You can call it God, you can call it whatever you want to call it. It's
mm,
true, it's real, it's the ultimate reality. And it's
okay.
that oneness absolute. So it's right there at the top. So I'm going there, and I'm just saying anything that's in the way of complete and total healing for this one that I love. And you can do it as a group of 8, or you can do it as 2 or 3 in the Bible, whenever
Mhm,
2 or 3 are gathered,
mhm, mhm,
whatever number. But the key is getting that direct line of connection and just feeling like, okay, this is what we need right now. We need absolute love. We need absolute that purity of that golden white light that you see depicted
mm,
in artwork on halos and so forth. It's around the world. It's universal. We all know it's true. And then you can feel it coming through, and then you can just direct it with love from your heart to the heart of. It could be a thing, or it could be like a printer, a car, or a person that you love, or the earth, or a community, the Middle East. You can pick whoever it is,
mm,
and you're making a real connection. And we have this ability to bring this much love, and it's not wasted. If we do this every day, how good can it get? How good can I get? How God can it get? How God can I get? Then we can
mm,
elevate this level of experience of conscious agency that we're each capable of.
I see what you did there. How good can it get? How God can it get? Ooh,
Yeah.
that is nice. I love that. So I read this book recently called Theta Healing by Vienna Stabal, and she talks about the 7 planes of existence and then going up to the creator of all things, that pinnacle that you just talked about. And I
Yes.
think, different people talk about it in different ways, but it's like if you can bust through all of the noise,
Yeah.
get to the source and bring that down and then be kind of a conduit of that, potentially, is what it sounds like. You're just being a conduit
That's
to,
it.
yeah. I
And just
love that.
allow that to flow. And if you want to clear out, if you feel like I'm an imperfect vessel, then you can ask that perfect love. You can say, clear me out. Whatever's in the way, I'm ready to let go of it now. Maybe
Mm,
you'd been doing the 7 deadly sins. Like, okay, I'm done with that. I'm not doing any of that anymore. And
mm,
there are hundreds of Buddhist torments. I'm giving those up too. Those are distractions. So if we get distracted with that stuff, then the course of direct line, can't even say it. I just get blown away when I'm connected to that absolute divine source. When you
yeah.
connect with that and you say, okay, everything that's in the way of this perfect love coming through me and to everyone and everything I interact with, just clear it out of me. I don't want anything else. And
Mm,
you can, so even if you think you're an imperfect vessel, well, that's what it is to be human, right? But you can work to clear that out. You can make it your pure intention. And then even if you don't have a group of 8, like you want to do a circle of 8, but you haven't gotten going with that, that's okay. You can start with 1 and start making a huge positive difference in your life and everyone who's blessed to be in your presence.
mm. I love that. I love that. It's beautiful. So we're gonna be wrapping up here over the next 10 minutes. And so I wanna ask a couple of things here around, the future of this
Mhm.
sort of quantum research, right? And the jumps and
Yeah.
the merger of consciousness and the quantum physics. Like, where do you see this heading over maybe the next decade?
We're going to need a new kind of mathematics. So for that, I love the work of Donald Hoffman, who he often talks about the amplituhedron, which is basically a way of simplifying all of the complex wave functions that we use to describe quantum physics and so forth. So if we have a new mathematics, which is going to be a higher level dimensionality of thinking than anything
Mm,
that humans have really come up with in thousands of years. It looks like we're poised for that now. As you mentioned earlier, we've got artificial intelligence by our side, hopefully collaborating with us positively. And this makes such mathematics possible. It's kind of mind blowing to see that there's this new topography that's um, introducing an element of ultimate simplicity to very complex subjects. That's going to be the way forward, as well as a much better view of who we are with this. Like, it's a stairway to heaven. I see it like piano keys.
mm,
So the meat suit parts, chakras 1 through 7, they're not inferior to the high self. They're part of it, and we are all connected. As we go up through this perennial philosophy, we do come together at a point. So there's a collaborative coalescing and joining and coming together that naturally occurs.
Yeah, there's this one consciousness that's all, it's all part of it. It's such a wild thing to think about because we all feel so unique. We all are taught, oh, you're unique just like everybody else, and
Funny.
right. And so, like, okay, and then people try to stand out and they try to do things to bring attention, especially in this social media age that we're in. And then I think we're getting to the point where it's like we're so deluged with all of this delusions, right? It's just almost like, wow, people are. It seems to me that people are coming out of this and going, "This ain't it. Whatever this ain't it." Right? This is everybody being an ultra consumer and just minimal spirituality, right? It just
Yeah.
isn't it. And we need to have collective sort of experiences, I think. And because back in the day, there was this phenomenal book. It talked about the religion with no name, the religion before religion. I don't remember the name of the book was, but the dude's Brian Marasco wrote the book, and he went to school to be a Greek. He studied ancient Greek and Hebrew, and then he got out and he's like, "Oh, who wants to hire me? Nobody." And then so he goes back and gets a job. He goes back to school and becomes an attorney. So now he becomes an attorney, and he has these research skills of knowing ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek. And so he went back and looked at these texts, and then he studied where they went through. I want to have this guy on because it was one of the only books that I read, and then I immediately read it again,
Oh,
and
wow.
because he was talking about how they like back in the times of the Greek gods and whatnot, like Demeter and Persephone and Dionysus, and they
Right.
would basically brew this a sacred spiritual a psychedelic sangria, right? And so they would basically have spiritual enlightenment because they were doing group psychedelic experiences and having these group spiritual moments, right? And so is that statement of die before you die so that you know you live forever, right?
Yes. Right.
So then, whenever Christianity came into place after the Council of Nicaea, and they said, "Here's what the Bible is. We're leaving these books out. We're leaving Mary Magdalene out. We're leaving any of these women. If you're brewing any of this psychedelic sangria, you're a witch, and we will burn you." Right? And so, and then what was crazy about it is the most sacred place where everybody did to go do the psychedelic sangria was where they built the Basilica, St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. That was the most sacred spot in the world for people to come and enjoy. And they said, nope. And we're making it a big church. And then what was crazy was you're going, okay, yeah, whatever. This sounds like BS. But he actually took some archaeobotanists, archaeochemists, archaeologists, and went back and then discovered the big vats that
Yeah.
was in this lab in Pompeii. So after Mount Vesuvius blew, there was a lab with all of these, and they were able to go through and dissect and determine what was in these vats, and it was basically a psychedelic sangria, which was completely fascinating. And so what happened back in the day. Here's some psychedelic sangria. Here's a mushroom. It turned into here, have a white wafer cracker and then some grape juice, and then like so. What's happened is collectively to me is there's not that co-joined collective spiritual experience, even if it was psychedelic induced. They were having a collective spiritual moment all together, and it was wild for them. And now we have nothing like that, right? And it's almost like you got to believe this is the way it is, and if not, you're going to hell and dying, burning forever. And so it's like I think there's a new thing that's coming out from all of this, and an awakening in a sense, where people are saying, "Hey, we all are all connected. How does it
Yes.
all work? Let's
Yes.
reimagine it."
Yeah, and you can see this in with people noticing UFOs, near-death experiences. There are all these
Mm,
different, they're called contact modalities. There's a book by that
mm,
name by Graham Hancock. And so it's just the idea that when you bypass the rational, analytical, left brain, materialistic mind and you open up the intuitive, then suddenly, whether it's a near-death experience that you had or you saw a UFO or whatever may have happened, maybe you're drumming, experiencing psychedelics, but that's that opening portal. And that's where you start to recognize this perennial philosophy I'm talking about, where all paths go to that absolute. So you recognize that there's a consciousness within us that never dies. There's
mm.
death to the physical body, but yeah. So that is interesting. And when you were talking about that location having been such a destination place and it's such a focus of intentionality, we also see that in like England, where the sacred pagan sites became the sites of the cathedrals, pretty much across the island, of the United Kingdom. That was tracked by Hamish Miller, the famous dowser, and he wrote about it in *The Sun and the Serpent*, where he and his friend were traversing to find these ancient sacred sites and noticing the Michael and Mary lines, male and female energy lines that kind of intersect. Where they intersect, that would be the location of like the Avebury stones or Stonehenge, or now it would be the location of many of these cathedrals. But before, they'd been ancient sacred sites. So it's really interesting. And you can douse those too. That's where I
Yeah.
learned how to douse, was in Royston, on the day that the museum was closed. But the curator came out, and when I told her I'm from California, and she said, "Oh, would you like to learn to douse?" And that's when I learned how to hold the coat hangers, and I was finding water right there in the courtyard in a very strange path. She said, "That's where the water lines are. You've got it." So very interesting that you can just think something and then you can operate like a dowsing device, and or your pinky fingers.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can totally be guided by this wisdom that we all have, whether even if you don't have access to the special sangria or the
Yeah.
wafer or the.
Yeah, the book. I was searching for the book because I wanted to find it. It's called "The Immortality Key: The Secret History of the Religion with No Name." So it was a pretty fascinating book, and that's really good. I want to ask this as we're leaving, as we're finishing this up. Where would you prefer people to go to learn more about your work? Where should they connect with you? What resources would you recommend?
Okay, well, I've got a website, realityshifters.com, and that's where I'm sharing this huge 25-year body of evidence of firsthand reports of reality shifts. And I publish a newsletter every month. Right now it's on Substack, so you can find me
Mm,
also on Substack. Go directly there. I usually also publish a monthly YouTube video, a short one, and that I blog on. I do a companion blog with the video, usually on WordPress. So if you're on any of those sites, you can find me. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, so you can look up Cynthia Sue Larson, any of those places. But realityshifters.com is kind of my home base. And then I've mentioned I'm affiliated with International Mandela Effect Conference, and we've got a big event coming up November 7th through the 10th. Tickets are already on sale, and it'll be in Nashville, Tennessee. So that website is imec.world. So that's cool. We
very
do
cool.
monthly live streams.
Okay. A lot of stuff going on
Mhm.
with that. And
Yeah.
so let me ask this. So before I get to the final question, which is the bonus question, which is
Mhm.
always a little fun, what would be maybe one message or piece of advice that you'd like to leave with our listeners today that are maybe looking to harness this, the
Yeah.
power of reality shifting to change their lives, maybe to heal themselves? Like, what's a good piece that might stick with them?
I think the best advice is starts remembering that we're in a participatory universe, a participatory cosmos. So often we think that our thoughts don't really affect anything. That's not true. Our thoughts and our feelings are in this. We're in a constant dialogue with the cosmos. So make sure that whatever I would recommend, ask questions that you really want to live the answers to. That's why that's like the question, how good can it get? You can add that
Mm.
in to anything you're thinking about. Like, gosh, I need a new job. I just don't know how to do it. How good can it get when I find out how to get into a better line of work? Or how good can it get when my relationships improve? So ask the questions that you need to live the answers to, and that you'd love to live the answers to. And
That is
that's going to be,
beautiful.
yeah.
That's powerful right there. All right, and our bonus question. So one of the things that one of my favorite YouTube channels does, Diary of a CEO. They always have they have a guest, and at the end of that guest will write a question, and that question is asked to the next guest, right? And so I got there. He has two of these decks, and so the one that I pulled for you was, what was the best conversation that you had, and why? And Jordan Peterson wrote that question.
The best conversation. Wow. I think it would have to be with my own higher self. It was at a terrible time, transitional time in my life. I was going through a divorce and deciding to leave the corporate world behind, where I'd been highly rewarded financially and so forth. So I was walking the cathedral labyrinth at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, which is a copy of um, the sacred labyrinth from France. And as I was walking, the labyrinth is not a maze. You walk in one way, get to the center. And my question was, I just wanted to know, like, what do I do next? And so this is a conversation with God, with my high self, this, stairway to heaven of levels of conscious agency, going up, 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 up. And so as I reach the center of the labyrinth, and now I'm able to stand still and just receive in quiet meditation. I'm inside the cathedral, quiet, just contemplating, ready to receive this answer. And then instead of an answer, I get a question. And the question is, what are you living for? And,
Mm,
and at that very moment, the church bells began to chime. It was noon as I hear
mm.
bong, bong. And it just got this feeling like I didn't know what I'm living for, but I felt like this is such an important dialogue with levels of myself. And by the time it struck 12, I realized I've got to be living for love. And
Mm.
that was the moment where I just felt like, okay, it's going to be all right. What I do next, I don't know where it's going. I don't have any career path. I'm about to become a spiritual life coach in 1998. That's unheard of.
Mm.
But it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. And there was no proof, but I could feel it. And that was the most important dialogue,
That's beautiful.
conversation. Thank you.
Living for love.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cynthia Sue Larson, thank you so much. You have given so much great energy in this episode. I think people are going to really appreciate this one. So thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
guest number 3.
Woo!
And if you're tuning in, go check out her website, Reality Shifters. Go to her YouTube, watch some of her videos. She's got a lot of great stuff out there. Cynthia, thank you so much.
Thank you, Travis. My pleasure.